Grim images of the inhuman slave trade that plagued the world between the 15th and 19th centuries. Fast forward to the 21st century. More than 200 years after, history is repeating itself.
Orúkọ mi ni Hafsat Ọmọbọ́láńlé. Ọ̀rọ̀ tí mò ń sọ yìí ọ̀rọ̀ tó ṣẹlẹ̀ gangan sí mi ni tó dẹ̀ jẹ́ pé ó ti ṣẹlẹ̀ sí ọ̀pọ̀lọpọ̀ bẹ́ẹ̀ tó jẹ́ pé ní ọjọ́ títí èní yìí wọ́n sì ní àǹfààní láti share experience yẹn pẹ̀lú àwọn èèyàn. But èmi wà láyé lé ni mo dúpẹ́ f'Ọlọ́run pé mo ní àǹfààní láti share experience yẹn pẹ̀lú èèyàn nítorí pé a mọ ẹni tó tún máa kàn.
Before we hear Hafsat's story, we know that she is not alone. In 2008, the United Nations estimated that 2.5 million people from 127 countries were trafficked into 137 countries around the world. Close to 1 million people, mainly women and children, are trafficked for sex every year.
I arrive in Italian before I come back to France.
In Italy?
Yes, because we take boat from Morocco, from Libya.
And then you arrived in Italy?
Yes.
Estimates put the number of trafficked people in modern-day slavery, now known as human trafficking, at about 30 million. To paint the picture of the enormity of human trafficking more vividly, let's flip back to the slave trading era. In the 300 years of the transatlantic slave trade, about 12 million Africans were involved, although not less than 1.5 million died in boat mishaps. The figure for modern-day slavery is already an alarming 30 million in less than 100 years.
Billions are bought and sold like a chattel, and most of them women and children. Human trafficking injures, traumatizes, and kills individuals. It devastates families and threatens global security. And it involves abhorrent practices, including death bondage, forced labor, torture, organ removal, sexual exploitation, and slavery-like conditions.
She locked me up inside a room, then she beats me up every day, then she maltreats me. Sometimes she will use a dog chain very long. She will chain me up at the back of the window. That is the back side of the window. She chained me up. She chained my neck to my leg side, then my hand to the leg. She used padlock to lock it.
Slavery-like conditions indeed. At this point, it is important to really understand what constitutes human trafficking.
Human trafficking is actually a legal term. It merely means the act of recruitment, harboring, transportation, sale, whether internally or internationally, in any way of human beings for the purpose of exploiting them.
Human trafficking entails the recruitment of persons for their exploitation by means of threat or other forms of coercion or deception. The consent of a victim to the intended exploitation is relevant where any of those means have been used. So, the question arises, if the slave trade was abolished in 1808, why has the world gone back to the business now classified as human trafficking? In the slave trade era, the inhuman business was driven by the demand for labor. What is the new motivation? There are domestic and external motivating factors. Let us begin with the local front.
I think it's hardship in the land, unemployment, and when somebody is hungry, I'm of the view that he will look for an alternative. So what makes them to succumb, giving their children out, knowing full well the danger, is just of hardship. That's my view.
When you ask them why are you doing this? Why? They say because of they don't have a work. They don't have anything doing. Sometimes you use them, they use the whole you got in house such a that's been high challenge, that's mean it's poverty.
Poverty itself does not make you to go out of your senses to the extent of sending your children to fend for you when you are still strong enough to take care of them, to help you in future. Even to those countries that these children are being sent to, you can still see some traces of poverty there.
A school of thought has come up with, say, the major, they call it the major is poverty. I tend to disagree a bit. And this is due to our findings, statistics, and research. Much as the socio-economic problem of Africa, Asia, and other developing countries are part of the problem, but it is not only poverty. Illiteracy is there, lack of information is there, even polygamy is there. A man who cannot take care of 3 children brings to this world 19 children. All the children are vulnerable to being trafficked.
I think that a lot of the trafficking we see today is closely tied up with our culture. People hand out their children for fostering, and this is done informally. And a lot of people have benefited from this practice. But gradually, this began to evolve into opportunities for exploitation. So this began to cause a chain, create a chain, and then the need for children as domestic workers grew as time went on. And so people began to come in as agents, go to remote villages and deceive parents into believing that their children were going to be provided with better opportunities in towns, better opportunities to further their education, and then these children were then sold off to willing persons who would, of course, would subject them to various forms of exploitation, and so a vicious circle started.
For the traffickers and their accomplices, what is the motivation?
Because there is a rat race for possession. Anybody will do anything, including violate his conscience and their beliefs, to be able to get to this place called comfort and convenience. So you find out that if my name is Labaja and I have a friend whose name is Bayo, and Bayo's daughter or son returns from anywhere and begins to flash things that look like their life is better, I don't care how it came about, as long as it's going to bring some comfort and convenience, even if my values are destroyed.
I also think that people demand for wants, demand for wealth is too much in Nigeria. To get rich overnight, a situation where parents can even sell their houses to carry their children abroad for prostitution. You know the degree of which you have gone. Not only that, you can even see some people telling their parents, their children, if they didn't succumb, they would drive them from home.
As already established, there are external factors that fuel the inhuman trade.
With the dwindling economic situation, obviously, migration is usually an option, both for educated and uneducated persons. And so this migration is not properly thought out, so people just want to travel. And then there was also the growing sex industry in Europe, and people began to take advantage of that. And so people, of course, at the beginning were willing to be recruited to work in maybe farms or working in various types of unskilled labor situations, and that was their belief at the time. And after reaching their destination, unfortunately, they were then subjected to forced prostitution and other forms of forced labor.
The booming sex trade in Europe. The sex trade is there, is booming. The law of demand and supply. They want girls for the sex trade. And so, where will they get these girls? They have to look for a country that they have vulnerable children to be trafficked to encourage their moving sex trade.
You also talk about trafficking, for instance, sports trafficking. People who want to traffic the young boys and girls with promises of getting them clubs, sports clubs, and in the process, they are now tied into contracts with them, and in the process, they are also carried away in terms of the financial benefit, no longer the promises they are made to these young people.
How do people become available to be trafficked? In the slave trade era, most of those sold as slaves were not sold by members of their communities. They were Africans from neighboring ethnic groups or war victims. Wars were fought for the sole purpose of taking slaves. Today, the story is different.
A quite percentage of them were deceived. Another percentage were told, oh, the family is suffering and you are the only girl in this family. God made you a girl so that he can use you like Joseph to take care of the family. So they became baits for other people's national development. That's what led them. Some knew and they said, oh, we're suffering and we're going to use what we have to get what we don't have. And they went on to it. And then I also discovered that there is a market where you have women who ought to be role models, who ought to be mentors for younger girls, turn themselves into lions.
Keeping the children in school become important. As we speak now, there are a lot of children who finish primary 6 that are not in junior secondary school. They are waiting to be old enough to travel. And there are many who finish the junior secondary school that are not in the senior secondary school. This is a state where education is free. But let's go to Ring Road by 8 o'clock and you see the population of children waiting for the crowds to disperse so that they can take their rest for the night. So there are too many children out of school. That is a very big issue. Then even those in school, because sometimes I have encountered several victims. Some of them went to school but are still not literate, which means that their minds, they are not educated. They have not received sufficient exposure to have a mind of their own that could help them to resist the lures that the traffickers bring forward.
Let's get back now to Hafsat and some of those on the receiving end for a peek into their story.
It's happened like this. One of my area sister, she came to me and tell me that, my sister, you wish to travel. I'm hearing that you want to travel out of the country, this and that. I said, yes. He said, which country? I said, I'm going to America. She now tell me that she have an uncle at America, that the uncle and his wife, they are American based there, which they used to take people along. She was now calling me and tell me that, hello sister, it's your sister that's on the line. Be preparing yourself on Friday 18. You have to travel with one of my sisters to America. I said, why is it so fast like that? He said, don't just worry, just prepare your mind. But on that very day, she came to me in a hurry to take me to the uncle. We met at National Theatre. She now tell me that this is her uncle. She's an American based, so she's the one that will help me to go to the American. After then, the man now said, okay, let's move. You pass through Kano. I said, Kano. This is my passport. Let me just, what's going on? He said, no time for that, because people are waiting for you at Kano there.
I was in Nigeria, so my friend, she was a stylist before she left the country. She called me earlier last year, that was February. When she called me, she said, I want to talk to you about something, but I don't know how you're going to feel. I said, oh, you can talk to me. What? She said, I want you to come over to Dubai. I said, why? For what? She said, because in the salon she was making hair, she met this white guy. The guy wanted to take her to his country, so she didn't want to leave her salon for strangers. I said, I don't know anything about her. What do you want me to come? And she said, I will just help her to make little bits, the one I know how to make. Then I will just put it in a show glass there. That there is nothing like that in Dubai. That she's very sure they will love it. I said, okay, but I don't even have money to make passports. Let's talk of the ticket and visa. You know me, you know what I'm capable of doing. She said she's going to Qatar for that.
I'm from Benin Republic.
How did you get to Nigeria?
My mother and her friend, they said that I'll come and help somebody in Lagos to come and be sweeping, do house help. I'll be sweeping, wash plates. Sometimes I'll wash their car, wash clothes, and go and pick their children from school.
I was recruited through my uncle's wife. The Mrs. Eunice was her friend. So she wanted someone to stay with her in Swaziland. So she introduced me to her. And she told me that we'll go to Swaziland. When we get there, I'll be helping her doing business, while in return, she will train me in school, tertiary institution.
While we wait for the details of their stories, human trafficking is described as one of the fastest growing activities of transnational criminal organizations. It is indeed big-time business. According to the International Labour Organization, ILO, every year the human trafficking industry generates $32 billion, half of which is made in the industrialized countries. Trafficked sex slaves are the single most profitable, with each costing an average of a little fewer than $2,000, but generating more than $29,000 annually. In recognition of its global spread, the United Nations, under its Transnational Organized Crime Prevention, adopted the Trafficking in Persons Protocol.
It is time for a new compact among civilized...
It required action on the part of member countries, and Nigeria rose to the challenge. In 2003, the National Agency for the Prohibition of Trafficking in Persons, NAPTIP, was established. Thanks to the work of the Women Trafficking and Child Labor Eradication Foundation, WOTCLEF, it is a non-governmental organization of Mrs. Titi Atiku Abubakar, wife of the then Vice President of Nigeria.
I had a dream, and if one has a dream, it is good for one to actualize that dream. When I went to Rome, I saw so many Nigerian girls on the street of Rome, in skimpy clothes. And as a concerned mother, I started asking questions. I said, why are all these girls in skimpy clothes? What is happening here? So I started getting the answers. They said some unscrupulous Nigerian women, they facilitate visas for these children, all their traveling documents, and they bring them out here to come and prostitute. It bothered me. Then I started thinking of what to do. I prayed to God that one day, that if my husband is in a position that I was going to help these children, I called the governor's wives, the chairman's wives, the local governments, everybody, the stakeholder, the CSOs, everybody, we were all there, the police, the immigration. So we all came together, we drafted a bill, and it was taken to National Assembly. This law has given birth to an agency we now call NAPTIP today that investigates and prosecutes traffickers. I will say WOTCLEF is the mother of NAPTIP.
Since its inception, NAPTIP has been able to take on the challenge with zeal.
There's a lot more awareness. People have come to know what's all about human trafficking. That's why you hear about them. You hear that this person is being intercepted. Police, immigration, they're all very much aware. So I say kudos to NAPTIP. At least they've been able to create a great awareness in that area.
I would say NAPTIP has performed very well, and in that regard, I will start by giving a compliment to the first Chief Executive Officer of NAPTIP. She was appointed when there was nothing on the ground, and she started a young agency and built it up very well. And we took over from there, and to her credit and to the credit of the very hardworking management and staff of NAPTIP, we took the agency to the highest tier. And government also did a lot to support NAPTIP in its operations in terms of financial budgeting and all that.
They are doing very well. Within the limits of the facilities they have to deal with, they've tried. It is not so easy. If you recall that our society, one person is related to the next person. They have an issue or they have a case. Possibly the parents brought up the child for trafficking or procured the child. How do you go? These are difficulties they have to face. They want to go on. The family say, no, he's our brother, he's our sister, he's our this, he's that. So they have limitations too. But within the limitations, they're doing their best.
NAPTIP was born at a time when there was nothing. I'm glad to say. When NAPTIP was created, there was nothing in NAPTIP. No facilities, no office, no budget. Gradually, NAPTIP became a very important agency, not only in Nigeria, but globally. NAPTIP has developed capacities of people like me. So I think we should be very proud of the agency NAPTIP because it has brought a lot of good quality in management and in approach of law enforcement. It is doing well for now. There was a time when NAPTIP went down. I can see our rating went bad. We had achieved tier 1 rating in the US trafficking rating index. I saw the time it went into tier 2 and has been stable on tier 2. It will stabilize. I hope NAPTIP will go back to tier 1 rating.
NAPTIP is very active in both internal and external fight in collaboration with many international organizations to stem the tide of the scourge of human trafficking, and by the grace of God, NAPTIP is forging far ahead in this regard. NAPTIP has been able to rescue and empower over 8,000 victims of human trafficking, and these victims are now reunited with their families and are doing well.
Well, I think NAPTIP has done very well. In the last few years, we've obtained close to 300 convictions, which is high, considering that this is grossly an underreported crime, and that our success depends on the willingness of the victim to testify. Because quite a number of times they say, you know what, I don't want to go back on what I've been through. I just want to move on. We have successfully rehabilitated over 7,000 victims of trafficking. We have about 8 transit shelters established across the country where we provide counseling and support to victims of trafficking. We provide them with basic education and mini vocational training support to get them engaged or interested in various vocational training.
Available records in Nigeria show that the number of reported and documented cases of human trafficking from 2004 to 2015 is about 10,000. So, has human trafficking reduced in Nigeria? What are the experiences of victims of human trafficking?
They call back to this woman, that the prophetess, that fortunately the girl you trafficked down to this place is a virgin. So, and she says she's not going to do the work. So what can you do about it? I don't know what the woman really said to them. They also got into what, like, everything it takes for me to be this virgin, they should do it. They brought some guys, I rejected them. So that September 12th, I was sleeping. Where Adem said came and raped me. Kai, it was a day that I can never forget.
She now take us to one big, as I should call that place another word. But they said that it is Arab, New Arab. Where,
in this Abuja?
Yes. Where little girls prostitute themselves.
This is a life story. Shall I tell you, if you doubt,
You can go and try, but I will advise you, never try. Don't even think of trying. You find yourself in a dream, you are traveling through land, wake up and pray to God.
Yeah.